for 515 Fantasy Football.
I know football.
Are you ready for some football?
Domination on Sundays begins with listening to these guys on Thursdays.
You ready for this?
Nearly 40 years of fantasy football experience between them.
Yeah!
One is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps, husband and father, entering his 17th year of fantasy competition. Brian Eikenberry. The other, also a proud husband and father, is one of the winningest fantasy minds in the state. Celebrating 23 years of excellence, Andy Hall.
Let's get the game on!
It's showtime. The 515 Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts, Brian Eikenberry and Andy Hall.
It has been a crazy year for fantasy football. If you're still alive in the fantasy playoffs, either you're extremely lucky or you've got some serious skills as a fantasy owner. In a year where it seems like everyone has gotten injured and at the most inopportune times, owners have had to be very studious with their rosters. Forward thinking is more than half the battle. Welcome to Week 15 and the 515 Fantasy Football Show. Andy Hall alongside Brian Eikenberry. I think I say this every year, Brian, but it feels like the volume of devastating injuries gets worse with each passing year.
You know, I think you hit the nail on the head. It really is about how creative can you be with your roster. With the injuries that have happened, people going out and drinking and partying, getting arrested. I mean, all of that stuff is really taking its toll. And I was kind of going through my starting rosters and looking, and the majority of my teams, only half are the people I actually drafted. The other half is people that I've been picking up on the waiver wires, making the moves, dropping because of injuries, and all sorts of madness.
Including one Gary Barnage, I'm sure.
Yeah. Hey, that was one of my first slip-ups of the year is not picking them up before our show aired. And I got beat to the punch a couple of times on Barnage. But
was it because somebody was listening to our show?
It absolutely was because someone was listening to the show. So I've started adjusting my waiver wire schedule and kind of waiting out and waiting for free agency to be open every week to make my moves before the show airs.
How did we do last week, by the way?
We had a plus 37. Wasn't our best, but certainly wasn't our worst. I mean, I consider that a huge success. Anytime we're really over that 30 mark, I think, is when we've had a good week. And you know what? We're good at navigating this crazy, crazy field.
Yeah, one thing you can't predict, unfortunately, are all the injuries. And I think by 1 o'clock on last Sunday, it was something ridiculous. Like, 6 significant injuries had already happened. And, early on in these games. And it's really unfortunate for, like yourself, an Andy Dalton owner.
Yeah, I took that one on the chin pretty hard. I was ready to go, primed up for a good playoff run here to bring home a nice, sweet trophy this year. And Andy Dalton broke his thumb in the first 3 minutes into the game.
And threw a pick.
So it's great when he finishes with like 1.6 points, and you lose by 20 points. So you know what? We'll just cough it up as less learned. That gives me more time to devote to you, the listeners, this week and next.
In the dictionary under insult to injury, there's that picture of Andy Dalton throwing a pick and breaking his thumb on the same play. No matter how you found us, iTunes, Stitcher, the Libsyn website, or our radio home at 1350 ESPN Radio, we thank you for investing in us and the hard work we put in week after week to ensure the best potential outcomes for you and your teams. Find 515 Fantasy Football on Facebook, on Twitter at 515fantasy, and you can get a hold of us via email if you like, 515fantasy@gmail.com. A lot to get through, including all the matchups and grades on the fantasy relevant players. We've got our bargain bin later on, the pop quiz. It's all here, but we begin, as we always do, with some headlines of fantasy note. And we begin with Mr. Andy Dalton. Mentioned he broke his thumb on Sunday. He's likely to miss several weeks. A.J. McCarron is your starting quarterback in Cincinnati. Also in Bengals land, tight end Tyler Eifert was not at practice on Wednesday. Neck and concussion issues. I'd keep a very close eye on him to make sure whether he's active or not come this weekend. Bucs wide receiver Vincent Jackson may miss the rest of the season with a knee injury. That's pretty significant news there, especially for those of you that have been buying into the Jameis Winston hype, Brian.
Yeah, this is something that it's tragic. VJax was a pretty significant piece. He was reliable when Mike Evans was always dropping the ball. But where comes injury becomes opportunity for others. I see a potential 2 tight end set here between ASJ and Cameron Brate.
Aha! Very good call. Browns corner Joe Hayden placed on season-ending IR with concussion issues, which is very unfortunate. Cleveland sure could use him. Seahawks running back Thomas Rawls broke his foot, placed on season-ending IR. Bryce Brown expected to start this Sunday, but newly signed Kristen Michael could mix in. Kristen Michael, back in Seattle, Brian.
I think as long as he isn't driving a car or getting his picture taken with cops, he should be just fine.
Speaking of free agent running back, Steven Jackson reportedly worked out for the Patriots, which is big news. Monty Ball has been signed to the Patriots practice squad. Running back LeGarrette Blount is out for the rest of the season with a hip injury. For now, it looks like the Brandon Bolden, James White mix there in New England, and perhaps we'll see one of those backs. Monty Ball already on the practice squad. He could be called up at any time. Steven Jackson worked out for the team, hasn't been signed just yet, but we're keeping our eye on that situation. Also for New England, tight end Rob Gronkowski, he is practicing in full this week, which is great news for him and his owners. Julian Edelman has started practicing, at least on a limited basis. The goal is to get him back by the end of the regular season / beginning of the playoffs. Jags running back TJ Yeldon sprained his knee. Free agent Jonas Gray has been signed by Jacksonville. I'm not sure you will see a whole lot of him this coming weekend, as I think Denard Robinson is the guy to own there. Panthers running back Jonathan Stewart has a sprained foot. He could miss Sunday's game, and from the sounds of it, he might. And it sounds like Fozzie Whitaker might get the start there for Carolina. Chiefs running back Spencer Ware injured his ribs. He is questionable for this weekend. Andre Ellington did not practice Wednesday, but he is expected to return this weekend. He's been battling that turf toe injury. Ravens have signed free agent quarterback Ryan Mallett. Nobody cares. TJ Yates will start this weekend for the Texans. Brian Hoyer is in the league's concussion protocol. Washington wide receiver Deshaun Jackson day-to-day with a patellar contusion. I'm guessing that has something to do with the kneecap and some sort of a cut.
I wish they would just come out and say what this means in English terms, because I'm tired of having to go to WebMD to find out what the heck kind of injury is going on with some of these people.
Yeah, it's a heck of a resource, though, WebMD. Colts wide receiver Dante Moncrief battling a foot injury. He did not practice on Wednesday, something to keep an eye on there. The team are hoping Andrew Luck will return to the field for Week 16. Ravens tight end Crockett Gilmore may miss the rest of the season, according to head coach John Harbaugh. And finally, Brian, Peyton Manning has returned to practice in Denver.
I'm curious to see what the locker room thinks of that situation. No one is questioning Peyton Manning's leadership abilities, especially Emmanuel Sanders, if you missed that comment in the headlines about Big Ben.
No doubt.
But does the team really want Peyton Manning to lace up again and start slinging interceptions?
Brock Osweiler's been doing the job for the most part. I don't see why they don't just stick with him. They certainly will this week, but going forward, you're right. It's going to be very interesting to see how they handle that situation. All right, Brian, on to Thursday Night Football. You've got our first matchup.
All right, let's rip it. Bucks and Rams here. Jameis Winston, I'm going to give him a B this week. He has a tough matchup. He has 18 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. He's looking to increase that 58% completion rating. He's got an up and down year, and it's likely another down for this week. Running back Doug Martin, I'm going to give him an A-. Rams, surprisingly, are the 21st run defense against the number 2 running back in the league by 37 yards. He's so close to catching AP. He's got 5.1 yards per carry, but still lacks in the touchdown area with only 5. Running back Charles Sims, I'm going to give him a B. He may get involved in the short passes and give some breathers to Doug Martin to kind of hopefully open up that pass defense. Wide receiver Mike Evans, B-. He has 27.5% of the targets, 57 catches on 113 targets. He's only catching half of the passes thrown his way. Wide receiver Vincent Jackson likely out, just in case you missed that in the headlines. And as I called, I am looking for a 2 tight end set here. Tight end Austin Seferian-Jenkins, B+. He had 6 targets compared to Brate's 3 last week, which is showing he is back in and ready to go with a full load. However, I would look for Brate to also pick up his snap counts with VJax out. So I'm going to give Brate the C+ here and ASJ the B+ here. Hopefully we see those 2 tight end sets. Quarterback Case Keenum for the Rams, no thank you. No value, no scores regardless of the QB situation here with a dead wide receiver core. If you are having to even think about Case Keenum, you are in a bad situation and will likely be out of the playoffs. Running back Todd Gurley, I'm going to give him a B. Tough matchup against the 9th best run defense, middle of the road for production, and Tampa Bay can stack the box on this guy because Case Keenum's not going to do anything. Kenny Britt, Tavon Austin, none of these guys should be in your lineup, especially in the playoff scenarios, as there are lots of other options out there. And the honorable mention, tight end Jared Cook, no sir.
Yes. On to Saturday. We get a Saturday night game. How's this?
Yeah, I'm excited.
New York Jets at Dallas. We begin on the Jets side with Ryan Fitzpatrick. The Cowboys are a very good pass defense, but you can't bet against Fitzmagic. He's been on fire, throwing multiple touchdowns in 5 of his last 6 games, while averaging nearly 270 passing yards per game in that span. That's a B+ for me. Chris Ivory is a B. The Cowboys rank 28th against opposing running backs, giving up an average of 21.5 fantasy points per game in standard scoring leagues. His usage in recent weeks is a bit confounding, but clearly he is a good play this week, at least on paper. The reason Ivory's fantasy value has taken a hit, Bilal Powell. Not only does he contribute heavily in the Jets' passing game, he also steals carries, which, as an Ivory owner, I hate. Powell gets a C+ in this matchup. On to the receivers. Brandon Marshall, a B+. You absolutely cannot and will not bench him. Eric Decker, the exact same. He gets a B+ as well. And the reason these aren't A's, Dallas has actually been a really good pass defense this year. I don't think they're going to stop Marshall and Decker. They might slow them down up from their breakneck pace that they've been on, though. On to the Cowboys side. Matt Castle, I'm leaving on the bench. The Jets, elite versus the pass. Darren McFadden gets a C. Unless he gets at least 25 touches, he's not worth a start this week against the league's top-ranked rush defense. The receivers, Dez Bryant's a C+. He's just not the same receiver without Tony Romo tossing the rock. Cole Beasley, I'll give a C to. He may see an uptick in usage as Bryant and Williams will likely be held down by the Jets' talented corner tandem. Williams, I'm going to leave on the bench. Jason Witten, a B-. Castle's security blanket. He may end up, Brian, having the best fantasy day of any of the Cowboys' skill position players. We shall see.
It's crazy, crazy, crazy. On to somebody who's been lighting up the field. We're going to do the Panthers-Giants now. Quarterback Cam Newton getting an A. Easy grade here. He has 35 total touchdowns. Always a champ, and doing it without Kelvin Benjamin. Look back at what could have been for the Panthers season, but could have been. I mean, look at them. They're on top. They're killing it. You heard in the headlines, running back Fozzie Whitaker, B-. I don't expect him to be too involved, as I expect Cam to have a little bit of trust issues there, and Cam to focus on Cam and the passing game. Wide receiver Ted Ginn had a smoking hot week last week. 19% of the targets, showed some crazy skills, and has a chance to do some of that same damage again. Tight end Greg Olsen, he's going to get the A here. Should be good to go. The Giants give up third most points to the tight end spot in fantasy football, so make sure to watch the report on Sunday morning to make sure he doesn't get scratched and hop right in on Greg Olsen. Quarterback Eli Manning, I'm going to give him a C-. You've seen the damage that the Panthers did to Matt Ryan. I would expect the same thing here again. Looking for those statement wins. While he will have the yards, he's also going to be sacked a ton. He's going to have lots of turnovers, so not a good start at all for Eli. Running backs? Well, none. You can't count on any of them. I'd rather start Charles Sims from Tampa Bay. It's just one of those things you do not want to roll the dice, put in a start, and they throw up 3 points for you in the playoffs. Wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr., a B. I'm not expecting a great game. He's still going to have that production, and you should still start him. He does have tripled the production than any other person on the Giants roster. Wide receiver Randall, C+, too much pressure, cold and windy. I'm not excited about him. I'm not excited about what the Panthers are going to do to anybody on the Giants roster. And in the tight end spot, there is none of value.
I'm kind of with you on the Panthers running back situation because not only do you have Fozzie Whitaker, who is expected to start, but you also have Mike Tolbert mixing in with carries. You'll probably have the rookie Cameron Artis-Payne as well. So pain in the butt, the Carolina backfield to handicap this week. So I'm not crazy, Brian, to consider benching Eli Manning after what he did last week in favor of, get this, I'm thinking about benching Eli Manning in one league for A.J. McCarron this week.
I would say yes.
That's not preposterous.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay. It's something I'm thinking about because that Carolina defense, man, that just scares the crap out of me in the fantasy playoffs. So.
They're wicked, man. Wicked.
Yeah, no doubt. My next matchup is Tennessee at New England. On the Titans side, Marcus Mariota is a B-. No question the rookie has been impressive on the whole this season, but I think this is a trap game for Mariota. Facing the league's 7th-ranked pass defense, he'll need to throw a lot in order to keep up with Brady, and that could lead to multiple turnovers. The running game, I'm leaving all of them on the bench, including Antonio Andrews and David Cobb. Passing game, Dorial Green-Beckham is a B- in this one. A tough matchup. The rookie is a physical specimen. He could snag a Mariota pass. If the Titans are down deep in Patriots territory, that's where he typically will look for him. Delaney Walker is a B+, one of the most productive tight ends in the league this season. On to the Patriots and Tom Brady, who's an A. The Titans haven't typically given up a ton of passing yards, but they have allowed 28 passing touchdowns on the season. Brady is a no-brainer here. The running game. I'm going to give Brandon Bolden the B here. He should get the bulk of the early down work, not to mention late game carries if the Pats are up big. So I kind of like him. James White, a C, mainly involved in the passing game. White has yet to see significant carries. For the receivers, Danny Amendola is a B. The Titans don't have the guys to keep up with Amendola, so I like his matchup. I also kind of like Brandon LaFell. Gave him a B. He should see a decent number of targets with the possibility of at least one score here. Keyshawn Martin is a C. I haven't seen what he's capable of just yet. I'd leave him on the bench personally, but if you need someone in a high-powered offense, you could do worse. Rob Gronkowski is your A. He is a no-brainer as usual.
All right, on to the Bills-Redskins here. Quarterback Tyrod Taylor, B+. He has a 63.5 completion rate, 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Wish he wouldn't have missed some of that time at the beginning of the season, but hey, you know what? He's looking good, and he's proven some chemistry and showing that he can learn and progress. Running back LaShawn McCoy, A. Shady gets fed here. Skins are 23rd worst against the run, and I expect Shady to get his due. Wide receiver Sammy Watkins, I'm going to give him a B. While you would like to see him have a big grade, it is a season as whole. He's averaging 70 yards per game, and if you look back, we were writing Sammy Watkins off weeks 1 through 5. So you have to kind of take that into consideration and think, maybe is it about play calling, maybe it is about the opponents. We're going to have to take a wait and see here, but I'm going to give him a B. Wide receiver Robert Woods, likely not going to torch the yardage, but is in the conversation for a touchdown. Tight end Charles Clay, C-. He's been a non-factor after week number 3, so I wouldn't start unless you absolutely have to. And if you have to, then you need to start praying a little bit. On to the Redskins, quarterback Kirk Cousins, B+. Buffalo isn't great at defending the pass, something that you have to kind of get out of the back of your head, that the Bills aren't the greatest defense in the world, regardless of who the head coach is. They have lots of receiving options, and Kirk Cousins, he has a nearly 70% completion rate, which I found absolutely astronomical. I find a lot of cool stats this week. Running back Alfred Morris, C+, always splitting time that isn't great. He finally got a TD in forever. And he had 2 yards per carry last week, so not great. Matt Jones, he's getting a B. He out-carried Morris last week and is going to continue to do so, also catches some passes. Deshaun Jackson, B-, questionable heading into the week. While he can be great, he also competes with tight end Jordan Reed. Jamison Crowster, he also gets a little throw in there, a little nod, but nothing to start in your playoff. Someone who is tight end Jordan Reed. He's always an A in my book. He always gets big yards, typically the leading receiver on the Redskins anymore, and has 7 touchdowns on the year.
Pretty great year for Jordan Reed.
Yeah, it is.
I think my next matchup I could probably do in less than 2 minutes. You want to time me on this?
I'll count silently. How's that?
Okay, cool. Kansas City at Baltimore. Begin on the Chiefs side. Alex Smith, a B+. He should be good for his usual 250-yard, 1 or 2 touchdown performance against the Ravens. They rank 31st against opposing quarterbacks in standard scoring leagues. Charkandrick West is a B. From a volume standpoint, I don't mind West this week. Despite facing the league's 4th best defense against opposing running backs, he is the only game in town in Kansas City. Jeremy Maclin is an A-. I love this matchup. No team gives up more fantasy production to opposing wide receivers than Baltimore does, and for that reason, Albert Wilson also in play as a desperation flex. If you need one, I give him a C. Travis Kelce is a B. He hasn't been all that involved in the passing game of late, but the Ravens defense may change that. Over to the Ravens, Matt Schaub I'm leaving on the bench. Buck Allen, a C. Kansas City has the league's 5th best defense against opposing running backs, and I think game flow will be an issue here for the rookie. Kamar Aiken, the only receiver of note here, he gets a B-, getting targeted a ton despite a terrible supporting cast that has been depleted by injury and poor performance. I'm not quite sure what Baltimore is going to do at the tight end position this week, and that does it for that matchup. 1 minute and 13 seconds.
I was going to say, not bad. I had you at about 72 seconds. Not too shabby.
Yep.
Well, I think I might get pretty close to you here. We're going to go to the Texans-Colts now. Quarterback T.J. Yates. I'm going to give this guy a B+. The last full game he had 229 yards and 2 touchdowns. Look for more of the same, and he's now had more time to prep. Running back out for Blue, Grimes, Polk. Who knows what's going to happen here. It's one of those big 3-way splits here for the running back position. Too much go around, not worth the trust here. So I'm saying do not, in the playoff scenario, do not start any Houston running backs. You probably shouldn't have been doing so all year if you weren't listening to me. Wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, he gets an A. He always gets his look, 30% completions, and he has 10 touchdowns. One of the big surprises this year in the wide receiver core. Cecil Shorts III, I'm going to give him a B. He's making an impact in stealing those catches away from Nate Washington. He's actually moving the chains and doing good. On to Nate Washington, B-. Nearly identical in targets, percentage, and production per game. Something fun here. 4th receiver on the Texans, Arian Foster. Go figure. So,
wow.
By default, tight end, none of value if a running back who has been injured for forever ago is still the number 4 receiver. On to the Colts, quarterback Charlie Whitehurst. Is that who's going to play this week? Might as well be Joey Harrington as far as I'm concerned, so D for don't. And if you do need a quarterback, you probably aren't in the playoffs to begin with. Running back Frank Gore, B+. Likely going to get a double load this week because of the QB situation. The old man's got ribs. Luck's not ready to go. And Charlie Whitehurst is out there with his flowing brown locks of hair. Gore, trouble is here, 3.3 yards per carry. Hopefully he can get some luck here and get going. Wide receiver T.Y. Hilton. Unfortunately, all the receivers are getting massive downgrades because of the quarterback situation. So I'm going to give T.Y. a B- here. May get his due, but it's likely going to be in some garbage time scenarios, or he gets lucky and breaks a couple of tackles and rips one off here. Good grief, Moncrief, kind of the same situation. If he does go, I'd give him a C at best here. I just don't see a lot of production coming out of the passing game for the Colts unless it's garbage time or just by chance. And by default, again, there's no tight end of value here on the Colts roster either.
I'm interested to know, Brian, are you not familiar with Charlie Whitehurst's nickname?
What is it?
He is the Clipboard Jesus.
The Clipboard, yeah. All right, I guess I have heard that. So, yeah.
All right, one more matchup out of me, and then we'll hit the pop quiz. Atlanta at Jacksonville. On the Falcons side, Matt Ryan is a B. Whatever his problem has been this season, I'm willing to wager the Jacksonville Jaguars' pass defense may be just what the doctor ordered. They've given up the 8th most passing yards, 7th most passing touchdowns, and they're 29th against opposing quarterbacks in fantasy scoring. Over 24 points per game in standard scoring leagues, Ryan has absolutely no excuse if he can't get it done this week. Devontae Freeman is a B+. The Jags rank in the top half of the league in rushing yards allowed, only 102 per game, but they've been nicked for 11 rushing scores and have been killed by pass-catching backs like Freeman in several games this season. Julio Jones, a B. Things may start looking up this week for Jones, who figures to be a huge part of the game plan regardless of game flow. The Jags have surrendered 24 touchdowns through the air over the course of this season. Roddy White, a C. I'd only consider him in a pinch at flex. Chances are there are better options out there. Jacob Tamme, a C+. Hasn't shown much of a pulse as of late, but faces a Jags defense that has allowed a good amount of tight end production on the year. On to the Jags side, Blake Bortles, a B+. Though the Falcons are a middle of the road in terms of the passing yards they give up per game, they've allowed the 6th fewest passing touchdowns on the season, only 17. Bortles has a full boat of weapons in the passing game, but a battered and bruised running game. I can see him attempting well over 40 passes in this one. Denard Robinson, likely your starting running back, a B+. Atlanta is hemorrhaging against the run in the last month. They've been remarkably bad since the team's Week 10 bye, allowing big games to Ahmad Bradshaw, Adrian Peterson, Doug Martin, and Jonathan Stewart. Robinson is a great dart throw this week if Yeldon can't go and you need a running back. Allen Robinson, A-. Despite facing a relatively good Falcons pass D this weekend, there may be no better wide receiver tandem in the NFL right now than the two Allens in Jacksonville. And that includes, yes, Allen Hurns, who gets a B+ here. Very rarely does he bust, but despite the big numbers from Week 14, the number of targets he saw is a bit of a concern. What I'm going to go back to, though, is what I said about Blake Bortles. I think this is going to be a high-volume game through the air, so Hurns should get plenty of opportunities. Tight end Julius Thomas, I'm going to give a B here. He should see a good handful of targets against the Falcons. They're susceptible to big days against opposing tight ends and have been all year long. All right, Brian, on to the pop quiz. 3 of fantasy's toughest questions, and we'll see how you do. Are you ready?
I am warmed up and ready to rock.
Question number 1. Are you buying in on Aaron Rodgers deep in the fantasy playoffs?
You know, I'm going to go with no on this. If you look at, just go back, let's look at a chunk of data. 5 weeks, good chunk of data. It's not happening. You know, it's just the running game is finally getting some ground. Everybody's kind of figuring it out there. So it's taking less pressure off of him, but still, you even look at take out it's not a good situation to have to rely on him. I think there's other more capable quarterbacks out there that are putting up the same amount of points, if not more.
The answer is no. Despite having a plus matchup at Oakland this coming Sunday, he's got 2 relatively tough matchups at Arizona Week 16 and versus Minnesota Week 17. Since Week 9, when he put up his biggest fantasy day of the season against the Carolina Panthers, he has averaged only 204.2 yards passing per game, only 1.8 passing touchdowns. The running game you mentioned also seems to have found some new life, which isn't great news for Rodgers. You can successfully stream some quarterback options week to week and get better production than him. Question number 2. Should non-playoff teams in your redraft league be allowed to make transactions during the fantasy playoffs?
Absolutely not. The leagues I commish, as soon as you are eliminated from the playoffs, your rosters are locked. You are irrelevant. You do not get to make any transactions. I'm sorry. Regardless of redraft or not. I understand the case for being able to, but no. Sorry.
Yeah, that's why I worded it that way, because in Dynasty leagues, they should be able to make some moves. But the answer in redraft leagues is no. Unless you're in a Dynasty format, there's no reason to make a transaction besides trying to sabotage a team in the playoffs. To me, that's sour grapes. There's no place for it. If you didn't earn your way in, you don't deserve to participate as you would if your team was still technically active. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, there's all sorts of little trickery to that, and it just it's not worth the time or the effort. And if you're playing defense and you're playing that little snake game, I don't want you around.
There you go. Question number 3. Reports out of Cleveland are that wide receiver Josh Gordon will be eligible for reinstatement on February 3rd and, quote, is doing really well, unquote. Brian, is he worth a roster spot if you're in a Dynasty league?
Depends on what the rest of your roster looks like. I mean, I will say yes. Just stash him there somewhere, I guess. But looks good by whose standards? The Browns standards or the Patriots standards? Because looks good in between those two teams are completely different.
I say the right answer here is why not? A dude caught 87 passes for over 1,600 yards and 9 touchdowns in 2013. By all accounts, has been staying in football shape. He even participated in Randy Moss's football academy last summer. His ceiling is among the league's elite pass catchers, and the floor you don't need to worry about just yet. You might spend $1 or so on him and put him on your roster and see what happens.
Yeah, definitely worth it. I mean, that's one of them, all the talent in the world, but don't know how to use it. Or keep your head straight.
Hopefully he gets his head screwed on straight. There you go. Back into the matchups, Brian.
Hey, that's my turn. That's my cue. We're on to the Bears-Vikings here. Quarterback Jay Cutler, I'm going to give him a B. The Vikings took a tough one on the chin last week, but the Bears can play outside. So that kind of stadium, that kind of setup really isn't a big advantage. And if you do, it's probably more advantage to the Bears than the Vikings. So I'm going to give Cutler a little bit of B here. Running back Matt Forte, he's also going to get a B. He's given up them valuable touches to Langford, but he's still Forte. And he only has 4 touchdowns because they go elsewhere to everybody else. Or the Bears just didn't have that many touchdowns. That's possible too. Running back Langford, he's going to get a C+ here. Limited reps, but has big break capabilities. 6 touchdowns. That's 2 more than Forte. But don't get all risky and throwing Langford out there to start unless you absolutely have to. Wide receiver Alshon Jeffrey, I'm going to give him a B+. He needs to prove he wasn't a fluke and why they drafted him. He's got 20% of the targets, and he has 99.6 yards per game. Is very respectable. I like the guy, and he's going to be what helped get Cutler that B. So Jeffrey, B+. Eddie Royal, C+. Not too big on the guy anymore. I was mid-season, but, it's just not going to work out. And if you're really starting Eddie Royal, you really need to listen to that bargain bin. Tight end Zach Miller here, Cutler's new chew toy. He's been quietly impressive and can steal valuable touchdowns in that tight end spot. He also has 15 yards per catch, so I dig him this week. Quarterback Teddy Bridgewater on the Viking side of the ball, C-. It's tough to go against the Bears' second-best pass defense, which is surprising. The Bears' second-best pass defense. Not too much to throw to, coupled with that really good pass defense, and Bridgewater lands in that C- spot. Running back Adrian Peterson, he's going to get the B+. Bears are below average on the run defense. He is also still the leader in rushing, and he is going to want to keep it. If you don't think AP is going to be on the sideline, lobbying for an extra carry or two, just trying to rip the ball out of his hands, think about how much the rushing title this year will mean to AP after everything else that has happened. He wants it, so he's going to be begging for 50 carries if it's even humanly possible. Wide receiver Stephon Diggs, C+, widely considered to be a disappointment, but someone has to get some sort of relief off of AP so they don't stack 9 people in the box. Stephon Diggs, give him a C+. Tight end Kyle Rudolph, C-. Aside from 2 games over 60 yards and a random touchdown here or there, it's a no-go for Rudolph. The Vikings, I think, are really in trouble for this game.
It's an interesting breakdown of that matchup. I hadn't even considered the fact that maybe if I don't want to go A.J. McCarron this week, I could go Jay Cutler. Green Bay at Oakland is my next matchup. On the Packers side, Aaron Rodgers, I'm giving a B to. The resurgence of the Packers running game we mentioned a bit ago has been bad news for Rodgers from a fantasy perspective, but great for the team. The Raiders aren't bad against the run, which leads me to believe Rodgers actually may opt for a larger percentage of passing plays here, but it's hard to say for sure. One thing that does seem certain, the days of A-Rod throwing for 300-plus yards and multiple scores appear, at the moment anyway, to be over. Eddie Lacy, I'm giving a B- to. The Raiders held Broncos running backs to just 34 yards on 21 carries last Sunday. Lacy is rejuvenated and running with a head of steam, but he also has James Starks to contend with, and as long as that's the case, I think it hurts both guys more than it helps from a fantasy standpoint. Starks I'm giving a C to here, and I'm not loving it. This is a tough Oakland defense in the black hole. Forget about it. Randall Cobb, a B+. Last week was likely a glimpse into the immediate future for Cobb's presence in the Packers passing game. 12 targets, 8 receptions, 81 yards. Not bad. He probably should have been that way all year long. James Jones, a C, bounced back from obscurity last week, but he's no longer a guy that's sneaking up on anyone. Desperation flex play only this week is James Jones. Richard Rodgers, a B-. The Raiders are terrible against opposing tight ends. I could see Rodgers getting targeted if the Packers have any passing opportunities inside the 10, and he could end up with a score. On the Raiders side, Derek Carr, a B. He didn't light the league's best pass defense up last Sunday, but he did play mistake-free football on the way to an upset win while throwing 2 touchdowns in Denver. I love this guy. I will not bet against him, even in another tough matchup against the Packers, who rank 11th in the league against the pass. Latavius Murray, a C+. He looked extremely pedestrian last week, averaging only 1.7 yards per carry against a Broncos defense that is performing similarly to the Packers this season. Amari Cooper, a B, shut out last week by the Broncos, who obviously made a concerted effort to stop the talented rookie. He should bounce back this week because Green Bay just doesn't have the horses Denver does in the defensive backfield. Michael Crabtree, also a B, like him just as much as I like Cooper in that bounce-back role this week. Seth Roberts, I'll give a C+ too. You can't deny the fact that this guy flies under the radar better than perhaps anyone in the league. He may not get a ton of looks, but he has been able to hit pay dirt 5 times this season. Both tight ends, Clive Walford and Michael Rivera, getting equal amount of field time. I'm leaving both on the bench this week, Brian.
Sounds good to me. Is it possible to skip an entire team?
Yes.
Well, I'm strongly considering it here because I'm about to do the Browns and the Seahawks. Quarterback Johnny Manziel, C-. Disaster written all over it. The only thing I'll give him is an ability to run and get you those extra couple of points there. However, 66% of his passes last week were completed. So that's actually something to raise an eyebrow at. The Crow, C-, went nuts last week, but hey, you know what? He's running into the Seahawks. Duke Johnson, same song there, so skipping right over all these guys. Travis Benjamin, D for don't. Do not start a single Brown unless you absolutely have to. And if you have to, it better be Gary Barnidge. Unfortunately, lowest grade of the year I'm ever going to give to Gary, B-. He can still catch, and he might beat a linebacker or two to snag a lucky touchdown. And I do mean lucky. I expect the Seahawks to bring the heat. They're in Seattle, 12th man. This has shutout written all over it. So if you can, start Seattle's defense, but you don't need me to tell you to do that. Quarterback Russell Wilson, he's getting an A. He is getting hot at the right time, ready to sneak in as the wild card here. He's finding his wide receivers, 13 touchdowns in 3 weeks. He did not slow up against the Ravens, which I loved. They just kept a foot on the gas and just kept hammering it. Expect the same this week. Your running back situation here sounds like Bryce Brown's going to get the start. I want to automatically give him an A, but the way Fred Jackson is out there and Christine Michael, all these other guys that are come into it, I would expect a whole lot of committee work here, so it's tough for me to commit to a running back on the Seahawks to put them in the starting position. But if you have to, go with Bryce Brown. Feel confident that he will get you some points rather than somebody else that's in another running back committee. Wide receiver Doug Baldwin, hello, he's getting an A. Whoever snagged him a few weeks ago when we called that out one, I believe he was one of our bargain bins. If you held on to him, it is paying dividends for you. I don't know if it's the play calling that's changed or if Wilson is reading his progressions much better. Something changed, and he is one of the biggest benefactors of change, especially late in the season change. Typically, when things have to change, it's for bad reasons, but this one's a good reason, so I love it. Someone else you might want to watch out for, wide receiver Tyler Lockett. I'm giving him a B. Lockett is a stash play, but is going to see those extra looks because of eventual coverage rolling over to Doug Baldwin now. Everyone's going to kind of roll and kind of focus that way. And you also heard that the Browns secondary's dinged up, so that means you're going to start bringing in all these extra people here. So watch out for Tyler Lockett. On the other hand, I don't think there's enough targets to go around to any tight end here on the Seahawks, so I wouldn't start one I wouldn't start one, period.
There you go. Cincinnati at San Francisco on the Bengals side. A.J. McCarron is your starting quarterback. I give him a B. He stepped right in for Andy Dalton, proceeded to throw for 280 yards and 2 touchdowns. And if it weren't for the 2 INTs, He'd be a guy a lot of fantasy owners would strongly consider this week, even in the playoffs. The Niners are comparable to the Steelers against the pass with less touchdowns allowed and less INTs. McCarron has a good amount of weapons in the passing game, a very hot girlfriend, and should be serviceable here. I thought I'd throw that in there, see if you noticed.
Yeah, I noticed.
She is pretty hot. Jeremy Hill is an A. The Bengals will likely lean on the power running game this week. Nobody allows more fantasy production to opposing runners than the Niners do. They're 31st in yards allowed and rushing scores given up as well. Giovanni Bernard, a B. I don't think Gio's going to get as much work as Hill does, considering the matchup, but he's always a good bet for at least some fantasy production, and against the Niners, anything is possible. A.J. Green, I'm giving a B+ to. Already seems to have a nice chemistry with McCarron and is a guy you simply can't bench right now. Marvin Jones, I'm giving a B- to. He'll get his looks too, but if Cincy's running game is working, he may be a victim of game flow. I don't believe Tyler Eifert's going to play this week, so I'm giving no tight end any fantasy note this week for Cincinnati. For that matter, there isn't one for San Francisco either. This is going to be short and sweet. For the Niners, Blaine Gabbert, a C+. Not a great matchup against the Bengals, who rank 6th against opposing quarterbacks in standard scoring leagues, allowing less than 17.5 fantasy points per game. Sean Drawn, a C+. The Bengals are a tough unit to run on, but since Drawn is the only game in town and also contributes heavily in the passing game, he's worth a flex this week. And Quan Bolden, the only pass catcher of note, a C+. Despite a putrid box score from him last week against the Browns, he's the only Niners pass catcher not named Drawn that I'd give any consideration to.
All right, well, on to the Dolphins-Chargers here. This one, on the surface, looks like you're going to squeeze right through it, but for some reason I've got a whole list of players. I don't know why. Quarterback Ryan Tannehill, he's getting a C at best here. 40 passes against the Giants and had 236 yards. How? How do you just throw up that? It's terrible. He's been a major letdown this year. All the big shots were calling him his number this year, and he has just failed to produce on all levels, likely regarding a lot of the coaching decisions and all that, but still, he was supposed to be something special. Someone who is expected to have a huge day. Running back Lamar Miller, I'm giving him an A+. He's going to look to shred the Chargers and win the game by himself. He did state he did want some more touches, but I think that was more production of game flow. If you look at his production with his 12 carries that he was allotted, he had 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. Big day for Miller on Sunday. Wide receiver Jarvis Landry, B+. He had 18 targets last week. As a receiver, having 18 targets in one game, it's ridiculous. Bolts do have an above-average pass defense, and the game flow could lead to the run. Wide receiver Rashard Matthews, B-, 12% of the targets, but averages 15 yards per catch. Same touchdowns as Landry. Kenny Stills, C+, 10% of the targets, 17 yards per catch. The reason I made this list long is because looking at trending data, the more percentage of targets on the Dolphins roster means lower yards per catch. As the percentage of targets drops, the yards per catch increases. So very much backwards compared to a whole bunch of other teams. So that was just kind of neat. I was looking at that, trying to fill some airtime here, I guess. Tight end, none of value on the Dolphins. Quarterback Phillips Rivers, B. Terrible the entire season except for like 4 or 5 games. This is not going to be one of those great games for him. Fun statistic for the Chargers, Keenan Allen is still the leading receiver on the Chargers. Are you kidding me? Like, How ridiculous is that? He played 8 games. He's still a leading receiver. That's terrible. Running back Danny Woodhead, B. Only reason he's here is because his pass catching, and he is the number 2 receiver in terms of pass catching on the Chargers here. So you have a guy leading who's been out for 7 weeks, and you have a running back who is your number 2 receiver. So if that tells you anything, that's where we're going with this. Running back Melvin Gordon, B-. Rookie is clearly still learning the NFL speed, and it doesn't always help when his team is terrible. He only has 600 yards on the season. Wide receiver Malcolm Floyd, do not start him, or who the apparent number 2 is now, Javonte Herndon. Something like that. Don't even know the guy, never heard of him. While they may catch passes here or there, someone's got to move the chains, I guess. I wouldn't expect either of these guys to be major contributors in any way, and I'm sure as heck not betting my potential shot at the championship or your first round of the playoffs on it. Those two guys have 600 yards combined receiving on the year. Tight end Antonio Gates, B+. He's your best shot at catching a TD on the Chargers roster and likely going to be the highest scoring player excluding the quarterback. Could possibly be depending on how many interceptions he throws this week. With the Bolts, crippled Rivers goes the old reliable who led last week in every receiving category.
So, Joe Philbin, Bill Lazor, both fired, presumably for mishandling Lamar Miller, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Remember last week, Brian, we had a segment called How Stupid is Tom Coughlin?
Yeah, are we changing that this year?
Yes.
Or this
How
week?
stupid is Dan Campbell?
It's just amazing.
They had a chance to win that game. Lamar Miller was doing everything right. He was running all over that Giants defense. And inexplicably, they stopped giving the ball after halftime. They're mixing in Jay Ajayi, which is okay once in a great while, I guess. And then, inexplicably, Damian Williams is on the field for some reason. I'm going, where's Lamar Miller? Yes, I'm a Lamar Miller owner in one of my leagues. So I feel like Festivus right now. Like I'm airing my grievances. And I feel like I'm not alone here. I am absolutely perplexed as to what they are doing with Lamar Miller. Dude, 80 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. He could have done anything he wanted to do. Oh, by the way, he didn't catch even one pass in that game.
It's one of those things where you wonder if behind the doors he is just in the coach's face, just telling them the business up one side and down the other, and just out of spite, he refuses to let him play football.
Ugh.
Because there's no other reason. The only guy you got on the field who is producing, you don't let him play the second half? This is ridiculous. You're getting fired. Goodbye.
How many coaches can get fired due to Lamar Miller?
Well, it might be 3 here.
It's like the next, who's smarter than a 5th grader or something. All right, on to my next matchup, Denver at Pittsburgh. On the Broncos side, Brock Osweiler, a B+. The Steelers are a below-average defense against the pass, playing into the hands of Osweiler and the Broncos receivers, who should all be in consideration for your fantasy squad this week. Ronnie Hillman, a C+. The Steel Curtain ranks 6th in the league in yards allowed to opposing runners and have only given up 4 touchdowns on the ground all season. Not sure if C.J. Anderson's going to play this week, but if he does, he's a desperation flex only, and that's all dependent on his status again for Sunday. Demaryius Thomas, an A. Pittsburgh has been burned on a regular basis in recent weeks. Thomas and Osweiler have a strong chemistry and should continue to be his go-to guy here. Emmanuel Sanders, a B. He hasn't shown his pre-injury explosion just yet. Also doesn't seem to have Osweiler's eye nearly as often as Thomas does, so I'm a little cautious with Sanders. The tight end is Vernon Davis. He's a C+. I wouldn't expect a ton from him here. You can probably find a better option on your waiver wire. On to Pittsburgh, Ben Roethlisberger, a C+. Denver remain an elite pass defense, but Ben, he's some of the more intriguing weapons the league has to offer. Look for him to take plenty of downfield shots, hoping to hit on some long ones or draw some interference penalties for field position. The running game, D'Angelo Williams, a B-. Denver allows 3.3 yards per carry on the season. They've given up 8 rushing touchdowns, but unless Williams gets at least 25 touches, I wouldn't bet on solid running back 1 or running back 2 numbers in this one. Antonio Brown, a B-. A really tough matchup, but equally tough to handicap Brown among the league's elite pass catchers. I don't see a way that they're going to completely shut him down. Martavis Bryant, a C. He's a dart throw in an awfully difficult matchup. Heath Miller, a C+. He has a chance to contribute some, as much of the coverage will be rolled to Brown and Bryant.
Well, we're going to finish up Sunday night here with the Cardinals-Eagles, double birds. What does that mean? No idea, but Carson Palmer is an easy A start. You don't have to listen to us to tell you to start Carson Palmer. No brainer. Things I like looking at are season statistics now that we're close to the edge of the regular season. Carson Palmer, He just eclipsed 4,000 yards with 3 games to go. Nice. Loving his chances of hitting 5,000 here. I think he can do it. So Carson Palmer, A. The running back situation here, David Johnson, he looks to get the start here, but watch out for Ellington. Whoever's going to start here, just watch it for Sunday, see who's going to do it. I'd be hesitant to throw him in as my RB1. Maybe a flex here or there's just kind of how your league kind of splits up that extra roster spot there. But either they're going to have a good day. They're going to have lots of yards, lots of production. Wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald, obvious A here as well. 96 receptions on the year for Larry Fitzgerald, which is awesome, and he's getting 28% of the targets. Wide receiver John Brown and Michael Floyd, they're both going to get Bs here. Both are averaging exactly 16.3 yards per catch, nearly the same in target percentage, and both have 11 catches for over 20 yards. These guys are nearly identical twins as far as football statistics go, especially being on the same team, so start at your own discretion. I would, if I had to, I'm going to pick John Brown just because he's more exciting and more flashy for me. Onto the Eagles side of the ball, quarterback Sam Bradford, another D for don't. Good Cards defense and a bad Eagles team with plenty of dysfunction and problems. Just get away from pretty much the entire Eagles roster if you can. Running back DeMarco Murray, C, he's lost it. The train is off the track, and it's crumbling down all around him. I thought the squeaky wheel would get it here, but he just couldn't do it. I don't think it was all his fault. I just think it's the entire team. He had 11 carries with 34 yards rushing last week. Matthews and Sproles, they're both C's as well. All three pretty much split all the touches last week, so it's not worth the risk here. There's a lot more consistent plays, a lot more consistent running backs out there, especially looking forward to the bargain bin. If I had to choose one of the three, I'd go with Matthews, but Ryan Matthews, not Jordan Matthews. He's been limited in practice and one of the biggest wide receiver busts of the year. I am on that boat. Biggest bust of the year, wide receiver category. Nothing except garbage time here. He might get a garbage time touchdown, but I wouldn't count on it. You can't, especially you just can't bet on it. With Get Off My Lawn's Arians, likely wants to maintain that position, does not want to give up a TD regardless of time left on the clock. That's just kind of how I see him playing. His defense, wide receiver Riley Cooper, pass, and same goes for tight end Zach Ertz. It's a pity to see the team waste away who people were thinking was going to be one of the big contenders in the NFC East this year.
And nobody really wants to win that NFC East anyway.
No, I wish the Lions were in the East. Come on.
Right. I think, honestly, the only team that should win it, probably, is the Giants.
You'd think so, but they don't have an easy end of the schedule either.
I mean, call me crazy here, but I see the Giants maybe being the only team that could actually knock off the Carolina Panthers.
You think so?
I do.
I don't think so, man. I think the stars are aligning here for just the Panthers just to get wicked evil on the NFC. I really do.
Well, I won't argue with you either way, because if it shuts Mercury Morris up once and for all, I'm a happy camper. So if they go undefeated, Mercury Morris can be silenced, and that'll be happy times. All right, on to Monday night. Detroit at New Orleans. On the Lions side, Matthew Stafford is an A. This should be a no-brainer against the league's most generous defense in terms of fantasy quarterback production. Remember, Brian, repeat the mantra, right?
Anybody against the Saints. Anybody against the Saints.
That's right. Running backs, Amir Abdullah. I'm giving a B- to him this week. There's a scenario where Abdullah is a pretty good running back 2 or flex for your fantasy squad this week, but it hinges on the Lions being able to keep pace with a Saints offense that should have very little problem putting up points themselves on Sunday. Maybe a little bit of a risky play, but I do think at the very least he should outtouch and outproduce Joique Bell here. Theo Riddick is a C+. He's a PPR helper. I wouldn't hesitate to plug him into your flex if you get a full point per reception. Joique Bell I'm just never all that impressed with, but I'll give him a C here regardless. Calvin Johnson is an A. Try not to let last week's disappointment cloud your judgment when it comes to Week 15. If you look at Megatron's usage over the entire season, Week 14 was clearly the outlier, and I think he'll be right back on track this week against a terrible Saints pass defense. Golden Tate is a B. He's been very productive in the past month. Solid wide receiver 2 or flex play. I wouldn't think twice there. Eric Ebron, a B. No Brandon Pettigrew means Ebron is the undisputed guy down the seam for Stafford, which should translate into lots of red zone opportunities if given the chance. All right, flip over to the Saints side. Drew Brees, a B+. The Lions' pass defense allowed a total of 114 passing yards to Case Keenum and the St. Louis Rams last week.
Sweet.
Drew Brees is not Case Keenum. I see him producing somewhat similar numbers to what he did against Tampa last week in this matchup. That's about 312 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I'm not calling my shot. Just saying.
Just pointing in a general direction of the fence, right?
Right, there you have it. Tim Hightower is a B+. I'm optimistic about him this week, facing a Lions defense that has surrendered the 10th most fantasy points to the running back position in the last month. We all saw what Todd Gurley was able to do to this defense last week, right? Yes, Brian, you saw it.
Yes, I did.
Brandon Cooks, I'm giving an A- to. If Brees tosses 2 or more touchdowns in this game, it's a good bet that Cooks will have at least one of them under the lights of Monday Night Football. Willie Snead, I give a B to. He looked very good in his return from injury last week. And tight end Benjamin Watson, I'm giving a B+ to. Rock solid play against the Lions, who have given up the 7th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends since Week 11. All right, Brian, for the first time ever, the bargain bin is a total consensus between you and I.
Yeah, I totally love this. So we don't communicate our bargain bins until we are ready to start the show. And never have we ever matched on all 3 bargain bins. So this is all unanimous decisions. We need like a special siren or something cool happening for this.
I think there should be like a cool animal sound for this, maybe.
I can look to find one, but I don't know.
Who's going to be our power animal for this show?
Oh, man. We need like a T-Rex roar or something like that.
How about like a power pelican or something?
Ooh. What does a pelican even make?
I don't know, but it's worth looking up, isn't it? All right. So for quarterback this week, if you're really in need, I want you to take a really good look at T.J. Yates of Houston. Facing an Indy defense that ranks 29th against the pass, allowing 276 yards per game and a total of 27 passing touchdowns on the season. In his only start this year, he threw for 229 yards and 2 touchdowns with no turnovers. That was against the Jets. In a must-win divisional game on the road, Yates will be equipped with his A game. Who's our consensus running back, Brian?
Our consensus running back, Denard Robinson. I mean, if you look last week, he stepped right in, made a huge impact, had great numbers, and now the job is his. He's one of those guys. Remember they listed him as the offensive weapon? Well, he just proved it. So look for him to continue that momentum into this week. Now that he's got all the lights on him, I'm looking for big things out of Mr. Denard Robinson.
Our consensus wide receiver is Tyler Lockett, the very interesting rookie out of Seattle. I don't need to tell you that Russell Wilson has been on fire for the past few weeks. A good portion of that newfound passing prowess has ended up in Doug Baldwin's stat column, and it's very likely he is owned in your league at this point. So take a look at Tyler Lockett. In the last 4 games, my man has caught 20 of the 22 targets thrown his way for 280 yards and 4 touchdowns. Oh, and he gets a Browns defense this week that is among the worst in the league. Tyler Lockett, you're welcome. In case you missed any part of the show, feel free to listen on demand anytime via iTunes, Stitcher, and the Libsyn website. 515 Fantasy Football is on Facebook. We are also on Twitter at 515 Fantasy. You can reach Brian and I via email, 515fantasy@gmail.com. We love to answer lineup questions, so if you have any leading up to your big playoff game here in Week 15, please let us know. Brian, anything to add?
Yeah, if anyone out there is looking for off-season content, let us know via the Facebook or in the podcasting realm if you've got some ideas, or if you want to get our thoughts in the off season, come around draft time, stuff like that. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want. This show is for you.
Big thanks to our friends at 1350 ESPN Radio in Des Moines. For Brian Eikenberry, I'm Andy Hall, wishing you the best of luck in Week 15. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show.